Hey everybody, I'm Russo and I do a little work here and there. It looks like you're back in the Ready Ward, and this time we are talking about something, I guess, a little more practical, and that would be storage. This is something that I've been thinking about for a while, and if I had more materials I might do something truly custom, but I'm sure everybody's seen these before. I don't know what you'd call it, a craft box, I suppose, a jewelry box, if you're making necklaces or pendants or whatever. They sell these in Hobby Lobby and Walmart and a lot of other stores. There are 16 smaller cells and one double-sized cell, and generally they're pretty good for storing minis, but the problem is the minis can shake around in there, and you can put a bunch of layers of varnish over your miniature, but at a certain point it's just going to be too much. You can only protect them so much from the box that you're storing them in, so I'm going to take something else that I've had lying around for a while, some of this funky foam, and it states a particular size on the outside of the package, but you really can't trust that. It's got rounded corners, and the edges either bow out or bow in, so, if you're going to want to go with one color of this stuff, you're probably going to have two packages, but you'll have all of the other colors too, so, use that for something else. But in the meantime, I'm going to cut some foam to fit. Your measurements will probably vary. And I'm just going to put a little bit of duct tape around it, because when I'm done you won't be able to see any of this. And if all goes according to plan, this should hold everything in box shapes. So basically, boxes, no tops on them. If you've cut them right, they should fit right into those cells. I suggest a dry fit first, and then you can cut them down if you need to. It is foam, so it'll compress a little bit too. It doesn't have to be perfect. The other thing I'm going to do to this box is a little bit of cutting. Looks like my Ogre Francis is coming down with a bad case of white knuckles. And as it turns out, I don't need that many spaces, so I'm going to combine the two cells to the left of him with the cell that he's in and make one supercell. I suppose you can use whatever works for you, some wire snips or a box cutter, maybe a linoleum cutter, but I got a feeling that eventually I'm going to have to go to the Dremel. We can figure out how this goes in just a second. And as predicted, I was able to cut out everything but these little ridges on the corners. So right now, the foam in the corner cells just isn't quite fitting right. A little bit closer, you can see what it is I'm talking about. I'm pretty sure my only option here is to go to a little sanding wheel on the Dremel, but that'll be fine. It'll work out. I've still got a few more pieces to cut anyway. And those pieces would be fronts and backs to each of these cells. The back is basically the same size as the cell, maybe a little bit smaller. Doesn't really matter because you won't see the edges. And the front is sized quite a bit smaller because I want them to fit down into the front. You might notice that I have 3 foam squares in what would be the bottom of each cell. So not like the back, but the bottom. And you might notice my lonely linebacker, who appears to be stuck to the bottom, and in fact he is. The top 2 layers of foam on the bottom cut little U-shapes into. It kind of helps to have the top U-shape a little bit smaller than the bottom one. I mean, if you're using Games Workshop bases, because they have that nice little bevel to them. But with the whole box lined with foam, even if they come out of that, it's not going to be a big deal. And while I did use duct tape to put the boxes together, you can't really use duct tape to stick these U-shaped pieces together. So I use Gorilla Glue for that. It'll take a while to dry and they will slide around until it's cured at least a little bit. But I figure give it an hour or two and those should be good. The next thing to do, really the last thing to do after you get all those U-shaped pieces put in, is to mark on the top of the box with a Sharpie where you want the pieces of foam that are going to be on the lid to go. You could probably place these afterwards, or you could try to put a big sheet of foam all the way across the lid, but aesthetically I just like this a little bit better. And it's definitely easier, if you're going to do it this way, to do it before you paint everything. And I would say you will want to paint everything, because if you flip this over, the back of this thing's pretty ugly. Bit of a pattern there, but it's in duct tape, and yeah, not pretty, but instead ugly. For the painting, as a sort of primer, I'm going to use Valspar's Paint for Plastic. I know the chair on the front of this is red, but it's a gloss black. And then I'm going to do my standard painting job, which is some black acrylic just to cut that shininess down, and then gloss varnish, and then matte varnish. And, we'll get this out of here and look at it painted. And yeah, looks pretty good. Looks like it'll be effective. I don't think anybody's going to bounce around to get damaged. All the times that I've shaken this thing, nobody's come dislodged. Some of them are a little bit looser than other ones, but again, even if they come out, it's not going to be a big deal because they're going to be in a sealed box of foam. Also, as a final note, if you get any of these bowed out edges and you care enough, you take a toothpick, put a little bit of Gorilla Glue on it, run it right along that gap, and then stick a clothespin or something on there. And in a few minutes, it should be tacky enough that you can take that off. But yeah, that's basically the whole process. I don't know if these boxes come in a standard size, so you'll probably have to do measurements yourself, and you're gonna have to cut things down to make them fit anyway. So yeah, until next time, you've been watching The Ready Ward on Russo Works, and I'm Russo, out.